thank you to the Tulsa Global Alliance and Bob and Kathy for inviting me to do this and share what we've been doing here at the Oklahoma Aquarium, as well as our relationship with the Gottesman family Jerusalem Aquarium. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So it's going to look funny for just a second, but it'll make sense in 1 second. Okay. All right, so everybody should see a slide that says OK, AQ, and Israel. So this was our logo and our slogan for our trip that we took. We really wanted to be able to celebrate this relationship that we have with the aquarium in Jerusalem, and that relationship goes back many, many years. Probably 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, the then director of the Jerusalem Zoo wanted to open an aquarium. And so he Googled best inland aquariums, and he said that the Oklahoma Aquarium came up over and over and over again. So he traveled here from Jerusalem and looked at how we do things here and said, I want you to do this for me over at the zoo. And so our deputy director and our COO actually designed the entire aquarium over there. And it was the first freestanding aquarium in the Middle East. So freestanding inland aquarium specifically in the Middle East. So that was a big deal for us. So this is the entry to the aquarium right there, and you can see those really cool fish. And then that stone, which is very characteristic of buildings, excuse me, in Jerusalem. Then this is the entryway, and I'm going to come back to those 3 different languages that you see there. But one of the things I love so much about this aquarium is they hit on all 3 of the C's in Israel. So the Red, the Dead, and the Med. And of course, the Dead Sea, if they had a Dead Sea exhibit, it would just be water. Water and a lot of salt, nothing alive. So the way they got around that is they put these photographs of the Dead Sea up, and then they have this structure that looks just like what the salt crust looks like at the Dead Sea. And then we have the Red Sea exhibit right here, which is gorgeous. And then the Mediterranean. And the person that you're looking at there is Amy Alexopoulos, and was my partner in crime in this trip, and she is our head lead of marine fish. So she's been with the aquarium. She and I both have been with the aquarium for about 20 years. She's incredible at what she does. And so one of the reasons that we went over there is that they're a very new aquarium. They just got started. And it takes a lot to get an aquarium going and work out all the kinks and make sure everything is good with your filtration and the equipment and the animals. So we went over partially to try and help them kind of troubleshoot some areas. And we wanted to learn more from them about these specific habitats. So there's some similarities. If you've ever been to our aquarium here, you know that our Extreme Amazon exhibit has a pop-up tunnel that you feel like you're in the middle of the Amazon River. And this is very similar, but you're popping up into a coral reef, and that in the middle there is where that pop-up bubble is. And you get to see all the clownfish and all the reef animals surrounding you. So this is their coral exhibit, and this is one obviously that I was very interested in, and Amy as well, because Amy takes care of all of our coral here at the aquarium. So we were very interested in kind of troubleshooting what was going on with their coral exhibit. So this is it close up, and you can see several of the corals are fairly pale, and that's because they're bleaching or have partially bleached, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But these coral were actually confiscated at the airport, somebody trying to smuggle them out of the Red Sea, and I don't know where they were headed to, but that's a common practice for people wanting to sell. Coral are very valuable, especially those Red Sea coral. So they had a real rough time before they got to the aquarium. So we were just trying to help give them some tips and pointers to get those coral really healthy and beautiful. So this is Amy again, examining a tank, looking in. This is what she did a lot of the time. She was running from exhibit to exhibit and studying everything she could. Here she's just trying to talk to that spiny lobster and probably looking at Noam, who's the curator, and saying, hey, I'm trying to talk to this lobster here. This is me with their director of education. His name is Shai, and he was wonderful. And he and I worked together on some different ideas on how to utilize biofacts, artifacts like the shells you see behind us there, the coral skeletons, things of that nature. So this was fascinating to me. Every graphic in the entire aquarium had to be in 3 separate languages. It had to be in English, Hebrew, and Arabic, because they were 3 completely separate communities, completely separate languages, and they needed to cater to all of those. And that was one of their biggest goals when they opened their aquarium. They wanted it to be inclusive of everybody. They wanted everybody to feel welcome at the Jerusalem Aquarium. So the really interesting part for me is learning how to educate in 3 separate communities, because there's different ways of taking in information, different schools, different ways of learning. And so they had to figure out how to accommodate those 3 populations in the best way that they could. And I thought that was really fascinating and very hard. So what Shai and I talked about was some of the other research that we do here at the aquarium is education based. And so we're looking at the benefit of a field trip to a public aquarium on a student's interest in STEM, whether they want to maybe pursue a STEM field, if they're more excited about it, if they understand more about it. And so Shai and I are actually going to get together, and they're going to utilize this survey. This is a survey that I give pre and post visits, and he's going to do this over there, which is amazing, because not only will I have a whole nother data set from another aquarium, but we'll also get those 3 separate communities and how the trip is impacting each one of them. There are about 35 part-time educators over there, because they give tours to every school group that comes in. So they have to have tour guides that can speak all 3 languages. So the other thing that we were doing while we were over there was talking with the staff about potential research. So Israel is extremely lucky. They are on the coast of the Red Sea. And the Red Sea happens to have some of the hardiest coral on the planet. Researchers come from all over the world to look at this coral to try and figure out what makes them so hardy. And part of it was a slower acclimation to warmer water, but there's more to it, and we want to know why. So what coral are subjected to in the wild are what are called bleaching events. And this coral is actually not dead. What you're looking at is the clear tissue of the coral on top of the white calcium carbonate skeleton. So when bleaching happens, the water heats up, and that symbiotic relationship that coral have with the algae inside their tissues breaks down. So that algae provides them with up to 95% of their energy. And it also provides the color on the reef. So when the algae are kicked out of the coral, you're left with just the coral tissue and the skeleton. Like I said, this coral is not dead, but it will die if it does not repopulate with that symbiont, with that algae. And that's one of the things we're really looking at here, is mechanisms to help facilitate that uptake of the symbiont. So we talked fairly extensively. This was kind of all of their management staff from both the zoo and the aquarium, because we're in a really unique position where we can kind of just pick up what we do here and put it there. So we already have the research plan laid out. We know how to do it. We know what we want to continue doing, and they have access to the best coral in the world. So it's a really natural fit, and we're really hoping that we can expand that research project with the Jerusalem Aquarium. So we did get a little bit of time to walk around, and I figured Tulsa Global Alliance, I'd put a couple of these pictures in. And this is in the old city. It was absolutely beautiful, but the thing that probably impacted me the most was walking up to the western wall and there was a rainbow over it. I thought that was pretty amazing. So we left Jerusalem and we headed to Eilat. And Eilat is on the Red Sea. And that specific area of the Red Sea is called the Sea of Aqaba. Well, on the way to Eilat, there's the Dead Sea. So we had to stop at the Dead Sea and we had to do the whole float in the Dead Sea. And so a lot of people are afraid of the ocean because they're afraid of what's under them, the animals and the marine life and what could bite them and what could be there. And I've never had that fear, but the Dead Sea actually kind of gave me the creeps more than any ocean I've ever been in, because all I could think was there's nothing alive in here. And that was so bizarre to me to think about floating on top of the water and there's nothing swimming below me. And there's so much salt density in that water that you can kind of sit up in the water like you're sitting in a chair. And actually, if you look across the slide there, you're looking at Jordan. And sometimes people will fall asleep and they'll float over to Jordan, and then the Jordanian army has to Navy, has to kind of lead them back to the Israel side. So this is Eilat, and this is the Sea of Aqaba. And it was very interesting for me. This was the first time I had ever been at an ocean in the desert. And so it was very different. Just everything about it was different. But what you're looking at there, those are all coral reefs, and you can see they're right off the shore. They're right there. So to study them, it's very convenient. You literally walk in the water, go underwater, and you're on the reef. And where you're looking right here, if you go just to the side of it, there's actually a nature preserve and a ranger station there where a lot of people go to do their research. And there's an interdisciplinary university lab there that people come from all over to work at. So this is underwater at the Sea of Aqaba. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna bore you with a few coral pictures just because I'm obsessed. But you can see the coral have that color, that yellow color. That's the algae that you're seeing. And then all the little beautiful reef fish. Coral reefs have the greatest biodiversity of any habitat on the planet except for maybe the Amazonian rainforest. So they make up 0.1% of the ocean, but they're home to 25% of all marine life. So if you think about that, they are the nursery ground for most of the small little animals that you find in the ocean. So they're able to grow up to be big fish and they can swim away from the reef safely. But while they're young and vulnerable, they hide within the coral themselves. So this is again, this is us diving, looking at the coral under daylight, under natural light. And this is just a beautiful Bacillopora because I love it. So when I was talking about the international component with the education research at the aquarium, that international component is really even more impactful than just working with one country, just working with Israel. So where we were scuba diving, we would walk into the water from Israel, the shore on Israel, and we would look across and we would see Jordan and Egypt, and Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. So there's 4 countries right there that are all sharing this Red Sea habitat. So in order to really look at the health of the reef and supporting the health of the reef, it's going to take a lot of international cooperation. So this was the Undersea Observatory there in Eilat, and this is another aquarium. They're beautiful, beautiful coral, and you can see part of their aquarium is natural coral right under them. So they are so successful at breeding their coral and growing their coral that they actually have their own repopulating, replanting program. So when their coral reef exhibits get a bit overgrown, they will do what's called fragging them, which basically is just cutting the coral with a bone cutter to go through that skeleton, and then they take them out to that reef right there off the shoreline and they plant them in the reef. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But that's really important to remember as we go forward. So they have a program there at that aquarium that I would love to be able to do here. It would have to be modified a bit different, but every sixth grader in the city of Alat comes to the aquarium, fragments a coral, grows that coral for a year, and then they replant it right there on the reef. So it's citizen science, it's hands-on science, it is in the field learning. It is so impactful for these students to be able to actually get out there on the reef and appreciate what they have right there. And that's the key to a lot of reef conservation, is making sure that people appreciate the importance of the reef. So I talked with the director there about potentially working together where we could even grow coral here. Maybe we couldn't take it all the way out there to transplant it, but maybe we could in Florida, and just kind of work together to get that program started. So this is coral that is fluorescing, and as Bob said, I study biofluorescence in coral. And biofluorescence is just a way of making light, a living organism making light, and it's where these fluorescent proteins within the coral are excited by a certain wavelength of light. It's blue light, about 460 nanometers. And then the protein absorbs this light, scatters the electrons. When they settle back down, it re-emits this bright glowing light, and it's absolutely beautiful. But I think it tells us a lot as well. It tells us a story that we don't get from looking at a coral reef under natural light. So fish can see this. Other animals can see this fluorescent without the special lights. We happen to need special lights and filters to be able to see it. So when I'm doing my research with coral, I have one right here. So I have this excitation light, and you can see it's blue in the blue range. And then we have to use this yellow filter, because if you don't, all you're going to see is that reflected blue light. So this yellow filter actually blocks the reflection of the blue. So if something is fluorescent, what you're left seeing is just the fluorescence being emitted. And I actually have these sitting on my desk right now because earlier today I was looking at jellyfish to identify some polyps to see if they were upside down jellies, which fluoresce because they have that symbiotic relationship like coral does. So this is our grow tank here at the Oklahoma Aquarium, and this is where I microfragment coral. You see I've got the bone cutter there. They do sting. They are a cnidarian. They're related to jellyfish, and they sting like a jellyfish. And unfortunately, I have to handle them in the process of researching them. And they get their revenge. Every night I would come home and my hands would just be swollen from all the toxins and from their little barbs. But so we grow the coral in this tank, and then I actually look at it in the lab. And so this is a fluorescent coral that you're looking at. This is under the microscope, and you can see we just have a dual screen there. And what I was looking at with this is I was doing some forced expulsion experiments. So I was basically stressing the algae to get it to get the coral to bleach, and measuring the fluorescence as this was happening. So the reason that I study fluorescence in coral is I feel like it gives us an extra tool to work with to help reef systems. So right now, we know a reef is bleaching when it starts bleaching. So when it starts paling, the color starts getting more pale, that's when we know that the reef is bleaching. So everybody uses this coral watch card, and it's just a color swatch that you take underwater with you, and you hold it up against the coral to see what level of bleaching it may or may not be at. So this is one of my coral, one of my model species. This is an Echinophilia. And if I were looking at this underwater, I would say it was mostly an E5. I would not be worried about this coral. I would think it's fine, it's doing good, not worried about it. But then you look at it under fluorescence. Completely different story. That green that you're looking at is the bright green of the coral fluorescing, and you can see these little individual spots are their polyps. Each polyp has its own mouth and its own stomach. But the red that you're seeing is actually the fluorescence of the algae. So that symbiotic algae, the chlorophyll, fluoresces red. And so I know that something's happening here because I should not be seeing that red. And so I hypothesized that I was seeing that because of the algae moving up through the tissues, getting ready to expel. Without this fluorescence gauge, we wouldn't know this was happening because, first of all, the coral would look healthy under natural light. And also, if we were to do a symbiont density count, it would be the same amount of cells in both because the algae are still in the coral. So this tells me much earlier that this coral is in danger of bleaching, that it's stressed. Why does that matter? So you remember me talking about replanting the reef systems. I really feel, and many researchers around the world feel like the way we will maintain our biodiversity on coral reefs is by replanting reef systems with coral that we grow in nurseries. So we'll grow these coral in offshore, just near shore nurseries, and then take them out to reef areas and plant them on the reef. The fluorescence giving us an earlier warning sign allows us to monitor a reef much sooner. Because if we're just growing the same coral that are bleaching, they're just going to bleach. When we replant them, they're just going to bleach because there are many different species of that algae, many different types, and some of them are much hardier than others. Some of them can withstand that heating of the water, like the coral in the Sea of Aqaba. So if I can watch a coral reef and know much sooner that it's bleaching and watch it, so what if, and I've seen this happen as well, what if those algae cells start going back down through the tissues? Okay, this coral is fighting off this bleaching event. I can see which coral are surviving the bleaching event, which ones are bleaching and then coming back, and which ones are dying. And then you can take those coral that are surviving the event and you figure out what species of algae they have in their tissues, and those are the coral that have that species of algae is what we grow in the nursery to replant on in the wild system. So in order to maintain biodiversity of the coral itself on a reef, we really need to be able to find ways to identify, because there can be the same species of coral with different species of algae. So maybe, and you'll have one individual here and one individual here, same species, and one bleaches and one doesn't. So we want to know why this one doesn't, and that really that has to do with the symbiont, with the algae. One of the other things that I thought when I was starting this research is, what was the purpose of the fluorescence? What was the functionality of it? And we know that it provides photoprotection, so it's a natural sunscreen, but we really don't know much else about why these corals are so fluorescent. And I hypothesized that maybe it's to attract algae. Maybe after they bleach or as they're about to bleach, they're getting rid of an algae that isn't beneficial for them and trying to attract a more beneficial, hardier algae to them. So I also did phototaxis trials where I basically put algae in a petri dish with a coral, excited the fluorescent proteins within the coral, and timed the movement of the algae. Because what's crazy about these algae is when they're outside of the coral, outside of the host, they develop an eye spot and flagella, so they can move and they can sort of see. And sure enough, yeah, they are very attracted to that fluorescence. And so that's another potential mechanism to introduce a hardier algae to a coral and then fragment that coral, grow it in the nursery, plant it on the reef system. So I'll show you just a quick video. Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to show you a really quick video that just kind of shows underwater and basically Amy and I geeking out. But also you're going to see some day dives and then a night dive where we're looking at the fluorescence underwater. And you should look for, when you see that green fluorescence, you're going to see one of the big brain corals has a huge patch of red, which is that algae. That same coral under natural light looked much healthier. So you'll be able to get an example of what I've been talking about here. Bear with me for one moment. So here's at night, and that's that blue excitation light. So all you see is blue. Now, when you're seeing that green, it's because the yellow filter is on top of it. So the coral during the day in natural light, I just think that's gorgeous. That is rubble. That is dead coral. And here is that coral at night, that same brain coral, looking at it under fluorescence. That's the one I was talking about. And there's a beautiful, healthy brain coral. All right. Well, thank you guys. Do you guys have any questions for me about anything? Well, let me rephrase that. About anything biology.
And let me say a couple things.
Yeah.
I realize I don't think we were live when I introduced you, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
This is our first virtual presentation today, so I apologize for the technical difficulties. And thank you for joining us. I'm Bob Leeser with Tulsa Global Alliance, and with us is Ann Money, Director of Research and Education at the Oklahoma Aquarium. And we're very grateful to her for spending this time talking about the Oklahoma Aquarium's relationship with the sister aquarium in Jerusalem and her trip there and her research on coral last year. Just a few words about Tulsa Global Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization that builds global community by promoting exchanges and activities with our 8 international sister cities. We also host international visitors through the U.S. State Department and promote global education and business connections. This is the 40th anniversary of the Sister City program in Tulsa. One of our sister cities is actually Tiberias, Israel. We're very grateful for the relationship that we have with the Oklahoma Aquarium and very grateful for all that they've done to support our visitor exchanges by hosting visitors and providing them tours and education about the aquarium and the environment. And we actually awarded them the Outstanding at Large Host Award last year at our Toast the Hosts award reception. So we thank Ann for being with us, and we have a chat function here if anybody would like to write a question. I'm just going to put that announcement in here.
Or I probably answered everything you didn't want to know about coral.
Okay. I'll start with one of my own. Was this your first visit to Israel, or had you been there before? And what, if anything, struck you as interesting or new about the travel experience?
So it was my first time in the Middle East, period. But yes, definitely my first time in Israel. What struck me was the landscape really struck me. It was just so different than anything that I'm used to. And the people were amazing. They invited us into their homes, made us meals. We almost had to at one point just say, we need to sleep tonight, because they kept us so just entertained the entire time. And it was amazing. And then getting to experience the old city was that's kind of for me, not something I ever thought I'd get to do. So that was very exciting for me.
Here's a question from Kyle. Is there coral near Cabo in Mexico, another desert at the ocean's edge?
Yes, I haven't been there. I haven't been lucky enough, but yes, there are coral there. They're not, the reefs aren't as large as what you would find in Florida or Hawaii, but yes, there are.
Okay. what kinds of things are planned for the future of the aquarium exchange? Do you have any long-term exchange plans, or is there a next step to this program?
Yeah, we definitely do. Unfortunately, there was some of the staff from the Jerusalem Aquarium was supposed to come here in late March for a conference that was happening over in Springfield. And in fact, a couple of the women were going to stay with me, and I was really excited about that because we really developed a friendship. So obviously with COVID, the travel was canceled, the conference was canceled. So they're going to reschedule, and hopefully they'll at least come next year for the conference, if not before. So we plan on keeping this an exchange going at least annually, if not more.
Here's another question. Although you might have adapted like a beekeeper, would gloves protect your hands without harming the coral?
Probably it would have helped my hands a bit, but I tried. But when I would wear the gloves, they would fill up with water the first time I put them underwater, and then I wouldn't be able to I didn't have as much sensitivity, and I wasn't able to feel as well. And seeing as I was using bone cutters, I wanted to know exactly where I was cutting. But yeah, I wearing gloves would have definitely helped.
Are there any similarities between the Jerusalem Aquarium and the Tulsa one? This question comes from Leah, the Israeli emissary in Tulsa.
Hi, Leah. How are you? She's lovely. Yes, there are quite a few similarities, specifically in the look of the aquarium, because this aquarium was designed by the same people who designed the Jerusalem Aquarium. There are quite a few similarities. And one of the biggest, other than just the look, biggest similarities is the filtration system. So obviously it's a lot of work to keep water clean for our animals. And we're an inland aquarium. We don't have an ocean nearby to pull from, so we make our own oceans and we filter that water constantly. So we reuse all of that water. So we do that here. Now imagine in the Middle East and what they have to do in order to conserve water. It's really rather miraculous. They have to conserve every single drop. So the filtration there is the same as it is here, which is, it was fun to see it in another facility.
Are there any other questions for Anne? Let's see here.
We are reopening on Friday. I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of people are asking that. We just made the decision today. It will be very structured. We're going to have timed entries, so there's only so many people in the building at one time, and we have markers all throughout the building to mark 6 feet. All staff will be wearing masks at all times, but yeah.
I've seen some of the programs that the aquarium staff have done on Facebook and other platforms during the last few weeks, and we really appreciate all that you've done to keep the educational mission of the aquarium going. Thank you.
No, thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah, I wish I could take more credit for it, but it's we have this phenomenal staff between our other education staff and our marketing staff. They just put their heads together and they did a fabulous job. I think there was a minimum of 5 pieces of content with education information per day. So they had a huge job, and they did a wonderful job of it. So I thank you for acknowledging that.
Well, if there are no more questions from our attendees, I want to make one announcement and then a little plug of my own. There's another Facebook Live event tomorrow for the Oklahoma Aquarium at 1 o'clock that will feature 2 internationally acclaimed photographers, Daniel Rollader and Brian Scarry. And I think that Daniel may have been the one that helped to document the presentation that we just saw. Is that right?
Yeah, so Daniel was our photojournalist while we were over there, and He was wonderful. He did such a great job, and we're actually working to be able to bring him here for our next shark collection trip so he can document that. But yeah, so he will be on Facebook Live tomorrow at 1, and then Brian Scarry will actually be on Friday, and he is one of the best underwater photographers in the world.
Well, Anne, we thank you very much for taking the time to join us today, and we thank you for representing Tulsa and Oklahoma so well as a citizen diplomat in your exchange with the Gottesman Family Aquarium in Jerusalem. It's wonderful to see scientists from Oklahoma and Israel coming together to study the ocean and the environment through a program like this. And we very much appreciate everyone who took time to join us today. We hope that you all stay safe and healthy. If you enjoyed this event, please follow Tulsa Global Alliance on social media or subscribe to our newsletter through our website for news about future programs. Thanks very much and have a good day.
Thanks, Bob. Bye, everybody.